Bum. Hello.
Hello.
All right, it worked. Hey, everybody. It's the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up, and we are a little bit late today because Damien's in another important meeting doing some planning for the future. And I rebuilt my entire home network yesterday. So we'll see how that holds up. I got a brand new router, and I rerouted everything. I'm on a new subnet. It's chaos. It's chaos over here.
I saw your was a tweet where you said this is not a good thing. I'm supposed to be able to work from home. How do I do that without a network?
It is an extraordinarily bad thing and extremely stressful, especially when the spouse acceptance factor is low. My wife was pissed. I was in Finland when the network went down. We all remember when the tragedy happens, right? When something bad happens. You say, where were you when Hanselman's network went down? I was in Finland, and I got an angry phone call from my wife, and I ended up having to set up personal hotspot with her phone and setting her up so she could, tether. That was lovely, but it also cost me about $100 in data overages because she was doing YouTube for the whole time I was gone.
So I actually worked for a place in Australia where we moved to a new building and they hadn't organized internet for the building yet. And they gave us this little box that you would plug in via USB with a tiny little antenna on it and said, this is the internet box. Plug this into the computer when you need to use internet. Don't overuse it. And I'm like, okay. And that was okay. We didn't overuse it for a couple of days. But once it became obvious it was going to take them weeks and weeks before we had internet on this building, and they'd moved us before they organized all this stuff, we just said to hell with it, and we plugged that thing into a machine, and then everybody connected through that machine and used the internet however they want. It was only later that we found out that that thing was costing them like $10,000 a week, something ridiculous like that, because of the technology it was. It was like some sort of satellite internet box or something. It was insane.
Did they know that was the case when they did this?
They knew that it was gonna. Yeah, they knew it was costing them lots and lots of money. Yeah.
Oy vey.
I just hope that they were offloading that to whatever company was supposed to be setting up the internet as like penalty fees or something.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
Damien's not here. Galloway is struggling with his internet right now, so he should probably get that router. So he'll come and go as he pleases. But let's just get down to business, and then we can all go up on our way. Plus, I'm super jet lagged. I got back yesterday, and I don't even know what time it is.
It is definitely 8 p.m.
Is it?
Look at that, everybody! You're seeing looking at the clock. It's totally not 8 p.m. But you see what I did there, everybody?
Dude, I'm a special brand of tired right now. I'm the brand of tired where I slept 12 hours yesterday, and I'm more tired now. You can see with the way the lighting is in here, I'm actually whiter than usual. I'm like transparent at this point.
So the fact that the sunlight is like hitting you in the face didn't give away that it's not 8 o'clock.
I don't even know what's going on. All right. So what's going on? I was gone for a week. What did we ship last week?
Well, last week we were rapidly finishing work on Beta 8. Most of the work on Beta 8. For those of you who have been following along at home on our roadmap, you know Beta 8 is coming up. So last week we got a bunch of stuff committed, and this week we've made branches for Beta 8. We are getting builds of what our candidate builds for Beta 8. And this week, everybody on the team is mostly supposed to be stopping working and doing a lot of, not completely stopping working, but a lot less work happens this week, and a lot more just trying out the Beta 8 candidate build, seeing if things work together, trying out lots of stuff, and just a general bash of our stuff for a bit. And then, assuming everything goes well and we fix all the bugs that we find over the course of this week, then we can get a Beta 8 out on time, hopefully, which will be nice.
Okay, cool.
And so that's basically what's happening with us for the most part, for most of the team this week.
Any fun perf stuff? Because I came up and I visited the Smurf lab where we do the performance.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
You know how amazing it was? It was so thrilling that I saw those little gigabit Ethernet ports that you guys were running on your desks, and I went and bought one.
Yeah, that thing is. I was actually funny the other day. The room got quiet enough so that I could hear that for the first time in like 6 months. It was kind of amazing because it has fans and stuff in it in the switch.
I've got this one here. That's a gigabit Ethernet right there. It's amazing.
So you also had to upgrade your network cards and stuff like that?
No. My whole universe has been gigabit for a while. And actually, 8 years ago when I bought this house, I wired the whole house for Cat 6 instead of Cat 5e, so everything has been, gigabit. One thing about gigabit that's interesting, of course, is that if you use the wrong cables, it'll negotiate down. So I had this one cable plugged into my Surface, and I wasn't getting gigabit, and I couldn't figure out why. Bad
Yeah.
cable. Bad
Yeah.
cable.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't been, I don't know how much Damien's talked about that, but we have the gigabit switch, and we have like a network not connected to the rest of the network, which is just gigabit, all gigabit, and we run a bunch of perf tests. They've been doing some interesting stuff there. Damien is the right person to ask. I haven't been following along. Lots of Kestrel stuff has been happening. Lou has been working a lot on Lou and Steph. Like two of our guys have been working a lot on getting lots of Kestrel changes in. Fixing bugs, finding lots and lots of problems. I have been working on something that's somewhat interesting. There's a branch of this on. I'm working on a couple of things that are somewhat interesting. One is having blob storage be our feed for DNXs instead of NuGet.org. Yeah.
Really? Is that a good idea?
So there's a few reasons for the spike, for the investigation at least, and we think we'll probably go with it. The main thing is that the DNXs aren't a NuGet package in any real sense of the word, outside of the fact they happen to be in a zip file called nupkg, right? It's called nupkg.
Mm-hmm.
You can't add them to an application and have something meaningful happen. They're not really anything that NuGet knows about. If NuGet had package types where there was like types of packages and you could like filter them, and you had like some packages were for projects and some packages were for apps and stuff, then they might be a better fit. But so the other part of that is we don't want them to be zip files. I would like for a DNX that runs on a Linux and Mac to be in a tar, right? A tar GZ and not a zip. At the moment, when you download the DNX,
I got you.
we go and grab the zip file, and then we unzip it, and we've lost all the execute bits. So DNVM needs to know how to go and reset all of those every time you go and like download a zip file.
Now, there was talk about a URL forwarder, so it would be like go.asp.net. So I assume you'd put it, whatever you decided, on the other side of that, right?
Yeah. So this is all part of that movement. There's live.asp.net that Damien's done, go.asp.net that we're working on, which is like a URL shortener, and this thing, which is our website, which would be allow you. Imagine there'll be a website with a big green button. You just click the green button, and it gives you an installer for whatever operating system you're on. This is part of like get.asp.net, right? That would give you that would allow you to acquire our stuff, and backing that is a big blob storage thing under CDN. And once we said, hey, we've got a blob storage account, we're going to put a bunch of installers on there, we said, well, we could probably use this for a bunch of other stuff. Another interesting thing that we were kind of trialing is the blob storage feed could also be an apt-get repository, for example. So you could add Debian packages and do apt-get install DNX and get it onto a Linux, onto a server, things like that. So I'm busily working on a bunch of stuff around that. I have a fork of DNVM right now in a branch which can download packages from a blob storage feed. It's currently pointing to a blob storage account on my Azure, but we're going to move it over assuming we decide to go this way, which I think we will. Seems to be working rather well. So then at some point in the future, assuming we go this way, there'll be a transition period where we're transitioning away from NuGet.org and over to this blob storage based setup. As part of that, we would also get more feeds. For those people who've been using DNVM, today you have DNVM install and you have DNVM install -u, where you get a stable or an unstable. So as part of this, we would probably move to a world where there was a concept of a channel where you install our DNX from our channel, and there's at least three probably. You have a stable channel, which we don't actually have any of yet. That will be once we actually ship an RTM of something. There will be an unstable channel, which is our beta releases and our RC releases, and then there would be a dev channel, which is our nightly builds. So yeah, some changes like that in the works, which I'm sure you'll see in the future as we continue. Yeah, I was also playing around with our Docker files. I don't know if anybody has tried out ASP.NET 5 on Docker or tried out Docker in general, but you absolutely should if you haven't. Docker is great.
It's pretty nice with the stuff that Dan Fernandez's folks did, where you can right-click in a project and go publish to Docker.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know anything about Docker, and it just works.
Yeah, the Visual Studio tooling. If you guys haven't tried that out, you can go and add the tooling, and then inside Visual Studio, you can like right-click on your ASP.NET web application and say go to Docker. and it goes and provisions a whole bunch of stuff on Azure for you, and then pushes this thing and makes it run. So that's kind of amazing. But even other things like I can build. Okay, as an example, I can build the DNX on my Mac, right?
Right.
But my Mac doesn't have any of the stuff installed required to build the DNX. I have a Docker image based off the Ubuntu based off the Ubuntu base, which where I've installed all the stuff required to build the DNX on that, but I haven't got them installed on my host. So I have an image, and I go Docker run, Glen C/Ubuntu, and then I go build on that, and I mount where it is on my local disk. So I'm actually building like the DNX on my Mac, but I'm actually building it on Linux inside a Docker container. And if I ever don't care about building the DNX anymore, I run one line and it deletes the Docker image, and then all of that stuff is gone. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of amazing, yeah. I saw a member of the Docker core team when I was at LinuxCon a little while ago who was running Chrome, not seriously, but she was playing around with running like all of her applications inside Docker. And one of the things she had done is run Chrome inside a Docker container.
Really?
And and so with that she could limit the amount of memory it was allowed to use. So she could say, run Chrome inside a container, and it's only ever allowed to use this many megabytes of memory. Right, because you can put restrictions on your Docker container, and that was interesting. I thought there's some kind of really interesting things you can do. And now with the Windows support that we announced, you can use kind of that same Dockerfile syntax to run containers with a Windows-based OS as well. It doesn't have to be just Linux-based anymore. So I think for those of you out there who haven't played with it, I think you're going to hear lots and lots about it. At some point, you should try it out.
I did a Azure Friday with a fellow who had been putting all of his utilities into Dockers and managing that. So he had the Azure CLI running in a Docker container.
Yeah, Azure CLI. That was another example. So I've got an Azure CLI Docker image file on my Mac as well, and it has my credentials, right? Like I did the whole credential thing to get the Azure CLI to work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's inside I can't use the Azure CLI on my Mac, but inside that Docker container I have Azure CLI set up, and I can say Docker run Azure, and then I get a new prompt, and that prompt has all of the Azure CLI set up, and it's already authenticated and ready to go, and I can exit and I'm gone. And if I ever don't care, and then I can delete the image whenever I need to. And that was kind of interesting. I'm never going to upload that image anywhere, but I just keep it on my local machine. But that was a cool, interesting little thing when I realized that Azure CLI was a Docker container. That was great.
Let's go through some of the Q&A. We've got some flowing in. People have jumped the gun and they've already got ideas going here.
Of course they do. You guys are amazing.
Sorry, say that again?
So of course they do, because our guys that watch this are all amazing.
Okay, can you see Q&A or do you want me to read them?
I can't see Q&A, I don't think. Let me see.
Left-hand side, fourth one from the left, but I'll read one for you. The cookie authentication handler class always redirects a user instead of a 401 or a 403. Is there a way to get that behavior without a hack, or is there another auth implementation we should be using? That is a very specific question.
And I don't know.
I would have to look at the code for that. Do you know the answer?
No.
I think the answer is if you don't like it, write your own middleware, but I would want to look at that and see why. Always redirects a user. Yeah, I would probably say either subclass or copy-paste that handler and write it yourself. It's probably not that complicated.
But if you go copy and paste that question into an issue on the GitHub repo, then the dev will actually answer it for you. Right?
That is even better. Take that question and put it into the issues on GitHub.
Yeah, and there's a question label, so if you want, you can tag it as such, and I'll just answer it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Chris or Hal, both of who do a lot of work on the security on the security middleware, one of those two answer any questions that you have.
Nice. Okay. Will there be a project template type for straight-up client apps like Angular? Probably not. If it doesn't have ASP.NET in the back end, I don't know. I don't think so. There might be one from the community, but I don't know if there's been any talk about an Angular-specific one, has there?
Well, no. There is Yeoman, obviously, and there is Sidewaffle. Right? They're both things that would allow you to get templates that were built, things that were built by community members to install. There has been talk on and off for a while about future stuff where maybe we would start doing things like that, but definitely not anywhere in the near future. And if it
Okay.
doesn't use ASP.NET and somewhere along the line, then there's no real reason for us to do it either. It's something that we should drive as a community if you guys want it. You know?
Right, right. What's the localization story for Beta 8? Is it complete, or is there more coming around localization? That's probably a Damien question. Do you know?
No, that is a Damien question because he's the one that's driving all of the localization stuff. And
I think that the general broad strokes have been set, though, have they not?
yeah, the broad strokes have been set, and there is a bunch of stuff landing, but I can't remember whether or not more will come in RC. We're trying to get everything in, but it's like we tried to get everything in for Beta 8, so there's no significant new stuff between between a beta, between a RC and an RTM. So there might be more that lands in RC. I hope there's nothing that happens in between RC and RTM, but it'll just depend on how everything lands. Like localization is a very it's not just us. Like it's not something we can just do. It takes lots of teams working together from all across Microsoft to make stuff
Hmm.
like that. So those things are important. Those things are difficult.
All right. Will NPM 3 support be coming soon for the Xproj template? This person is running into max path issues.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason that everybody wants NPM 3.
So yes, it is coming
Yes,
soon, or yes, it's on the
I
list.
mean, it's on the list. I'm not sure how it fits because it's part of the tooling team's job. But we have to, assuming it does help with the long paths, there's no reason for it not to do it. So I'm assuming we will do it at some point very soon. And that was the big reason where it gives you the absolutely flat paths, like the maximally minimal or something. I don't know what the word is, but as short as it can be. So yeah, support for that is coming. We are talking about it, but I think, but yeah, I don't know exactly when.
You're so helpful.
Yeah, so far I have not been able to answer any of your questions.
Useless.
Uh,
Oh, it's okay. I feel the same way sometimes.
uh-huh.
Is Beta 8, so since Beta 8 drops Helios support and moves to HTTP platform handler, now
Mm.
this is where I think this question is not correct. HTTP platform handler, which forwards to Kestrel, and Kestrel is in the production web server. What is the option for production deployment on Windows? So I think the better way to phrase that is that if IIS uses HTTP platform handler, and does it always go to Kestrel, even on Windows?
So there is, we aren't, yes, it will, and Kestrel, by definition, that means Kestrel has to become a production
Exactly.
web server.
Okay. So
Uh,
the thing, I think the point is that we have been saying for a while that Kestrel is not production.
yeah, and
Now
originally
that
that
is
was,
a change. It is the intent that it will be.
yeah. However, I'm not sure that we are completely agreed upon not getting rid of Web Listener 100%. We'll probably have Web Listener around, but it's not going to really be our main thing. We want to finally get to a world where there's just one thing, and it's Kestrel.
But I
So we'll
would
see.
ask the question though: is it unfair to call Kestrel a web server in this context, right? Because there's the web, it's the page processor. You know what I mean? It's the application container. It's the application processor. It's not
Yeah,
going to necessarily serve static web pages.
not necessarily.
I
One
mean,
of
it
the
could,
key,
but you know what I'm saying?
one of
It's
the
more of
key
a
Yeah, but one of the key guidances that we want to say all the time with Kestrel is that um, we don't think we're ever going to advise anybody to expose Kestrel to the internet without something in between the internet and it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's kind of like, yeah, it's just like way everyone else works. And with like Node, is Node a web server?
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
right. So,
no, but it is the thing that you broker to for
exactly.
processing of
So,
pages. But you would
so
never put Node on the outside.
exactly. So Kestrel will start up and it will host your stuff, and we expect you're always going to put IIS via the HTTP platform handler or Nginx or something in between Kestrel and anybody that could be talking to it. And then depending upon what the thing is that you put in between and what its capabilities are, the amount of stuff that you defer to middleware versus being done by IIS or something like that is going to differ. But because you can absolutely have a static file middleware, but you could also have static files be handled by the thing before the request even gets to Kestrel. Maybe it seems entirely possible that you could configure your stuff that way.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Is the Docker extension for Visual Studio open source? It is
Uh,
not.
no, I don't think so. Yeah, I
It
don't
is
think so.
not.
Yeah,
Who
it's
owns
not.
that now? I think Dan Fernandez switched jobs.
Yeah, it's not Dan Fernandez anymore. There's another guy, and he He is rapidly ramping up on this stuff because it's suddenly very important to lots of people, and he didn't really know anything about it when it got handed to him. But it's not Dan Fernandez. There's
No
a few.
pressure.
I have a yeah. He's coping pretty well though. I met him once and talked to him about stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few people I have on threads that I've seen around, and there's this guy that I was talking about, and I can't remember, his name escapes me, but yes, it's not open source, and I don't know if that's not open source yet or just not open source in general. It's quite possible it will be open source at some point. The problem here is the same conundrum that we've always had with open sourcing our web tooling. You can't build it and use it because it has to be signed by Microsoft in order to work inside Visual Studio.
Right. Open sourcing UI stuff, it seems to be really complicated for us.
Yeah. So we always walk this line where everybody wants us to open source it, but then as soon as we say, let's open source it, I mean, there is work in us getting a thing to be open sourced and out there for everybody to use. And then we're like, is it actually worth, are people out there going to gain enough from this? Right? That's always, because you can't build it, you can't fork it and do stuff with it. Like, maybe you could, but it would be hard, right?
That's such a much long. We should have that conversation, like a full episode on that conversation one of these days, because everyone loves to say we should open source this and that, but man, I tell you, when it comes to asking for help, people don't tend to roll in with the help. You know what I mean? They want the flexibility that open source represents. They want the perceived safety. That, like, well, it'll be okay if they open source it, then I can count on it. But few people jump in and offer to help.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that was always the problem. I mean, that's how we, for a long time, historically, we had the reputation of open source being the way we killed things, because we would open source things, and generally we would open source them with the intent that anybody would help us, but typically we didn't get any help, and so things tended to die because there wasn't people internally working on them anymore.
I would say that the new Microsoft wants to open source stuff and will open source stuff more than ever before, but we will not open source stuff to kill it. And so, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's the thing about tooling in general. That was a tangent, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's bust through some of these things here. Will there be a web client implementation for DNX Core?
Web client.
I think they're saying is there a web client implementation for .NET Core?
I'm not sure what they're asking.
They want to be able to use web client from .NET Core.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that either, because I can't remember what everything is at. And
Let me see here.
No.
Web client is not yet. Oh, here we go. As of May, there was a question that said that web client is not yet in the core repo and likely will not be ported because, okay, I see. The issue is that there's no progress reporting in HTTP client. That would probably be a conversation that Emo Landworth would probably know about. But that's more of a .NET Core thing, and I would check over in their repo. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that. We kind of suck without Damien, don't we?
We do suck without Damien. He keeps up on a lot of this stuff, and he's been an ASP.NET PM for about 150 years, I think.
It's true, and I've been out of town. My excuse is I just got back. Thompson wants to know.
I guess the other question is why you want web. Why you want what is it about web client that makes you really want it versus some of the other ways that you could have done HTTP requests, right? Like, is HTTP client not enough? What is it about it that you really want?
Person says, thank you for the ASP.NET course you did for MBA. Can't wait for parts 2 and 3. Any rough timelines? Right now, my October and December is absolute. October, November is chaos. So I would say middle of December for one of them, and January, February for the other one.
Yeah. And for all those people who are sending applause to Scott like every single day, you guys are all amazing.
It's pretty fabulous. In fact, I've gotten probably 150 applause tweets. Pretty exciting.
Apparently we have an enjoyable. Apparently it's enjoyable to watch. We crack enough jokes, I suppose.
Yeah, I liked it. You can come back on the show.
Fantastic.
You're my favorite MBA person. Is it necessary to place something in front of Kestrel all the time?
Is it necessary?
No, it's not. This person says, I'm thinking about the case where we use Kestrel in a console app as a simple way to expose admin UI for a service. No, that would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But you wouldn't even need Kestrel for that, would you?
Yeah, so the thing with this is just we we want you to put something that has had time put into security hardening be exposed to people who might be trying to attack
But
them.
to the
More
example
time.
of a local host app, though,
Yeah. It's never
self-host.
leaving. If the communication is never leaving your machine, fine.
Yeah.
And on your when you're deving, you might not. You might decide just to run it straight in your console app while you're deving, and
Mhm.
not your console, and not actually put something in front of it then too, right? Like
Right,
those
right.
sorts of scenarios are fine. We just want to try and it's very difficult with advice, specifically advice that has a security impact.
Hmm.
It's always safer just to say never do something than it is to say do something except for in these situations, or if you're in this situation or something, right? Because it becomes nuanced and then maybe it's okay. So it's usually easier, a lot safer for me just to say always put something in front of it and then let people make a decision not to on their own than it is to provide a bunch of guidance. But yeah, there's obviously scenarios where you don't have any risk of not having something in front of it. But
Hmm.
if you look at our official guidance, as our official guidance comes out for like ways that we've tried, ways that we recommend hosting ASP.NET 5 applications, there's always going to be something in front of Kestrel.
What is the status of HTTP 2 on ASP.NET 5? Will it be in the initial production release?
So probably not. I don't think so. No. You will get some stuff. So there is some HTTP2 support in there because some of it you can just get because you take So I'm trying to remember which bits of HTTP2 you get. I don't think you get push promises, but yeah. So some of HTTP2 will be there, but not all of it,
Yeah.
basically. So that's
And
it.
of course, with HTTP 2, there's the what does ASP.NET think about it, and then there's what's doing the actual socket work
Yeah,
and having the support for that. So it's got to go all the way down the stack.
yeah. And HTTP6 supports it, I believe. But for when we had Web Listener, I'm not 100% sure on how some of that story has changed for Kestrel, but I believe the basic
Hmm.
is still the same, which is some things already work because they do, and some things will not work.
Someone wants to know, Maher wants to know why control, he's saying semicolon shortcut is not working in Visual Studio 2015. Because we showed it in the MVI. I think he's referring to control comma, which is what we were showing.
What were we showing? Yeah. Oh,
Remember how to move around quickly within, I'm bringing up Visual Studio right here.
okay.
You hit control comma in
Hmm.
order to quickly move within yeah,
Yeah.
control comma is what you want to do, Maher.
Do we need to
Um,
do like a special Google Hangout for all the people who watch the MVA and want to ask us questions about it?
yeah, apparently the MVA is the topic du jour.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, this is a good question. For a second, let me switch over to share my screen here.
Hmm.
Let me know if you can see this.
I can see it.
So you're sitting here and you hit control comma,
Yeah.
and you start typing, and
Hmm.
this shows up right here.
I forget that we even showed this in the
Yeah,
MVA.
yeah. I remember, and I made a whole big deal about it, how it's the most important thing that the world should know.
Clearly, I was paying attention to everything that you did.
What I can't remember though is how to set up keyboards. You
Mm,
know the command for that? Like when you hit control comma,
yeah.
this is called, I don't know what this is called.
The hyphen.
And where's the keyboard
So
shortcut? Here
just
you go.
just go to search options and you can find
There it
anything.
is. It's edit navigate to, Meher.
So the
So
next thing that you have to show everybody is Control Q to find things, right?
no, I'm just pointing out right here that it's
Mm-hmm.
this right here is the
Mm.
control comma. So if on your version of Visual Studio it is
Something
mapped to
else.
something else, that's how you would know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can make that anything that makes you happy.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
So right.
Let's bang through these here because I've got to go to a track meet. A while back, Scott Hunter hinted at you integrating ASP.NET 5 into Azure PaaS v2. I guess that meant Service Fabric because it's awesome. You have an empty page in the docs for doing just that. Any rough timeline? It is the intent of ASP.NET 5 to integrate into every good, awesome thing that we do.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea when that would work in Azure
Lu-
PaaS v2. I don't
Luckily,
even.
this is one of the things I know about that Damien doesn't. Yeah, it's amazing.
You're lying.
Yeah, he probably does know.
Okay, cool. What is it?
But we do work with Service Fabric, and we have a package that lets you run ASP.NET 5 applications inside Service Fabric, and then use ASP.NET 5 as like communication layers between stateful and stateless services, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. And you will basically start seeing that package as Service Fabric start releasing tooling updates with support for things. So there is stuff happening, and you will absolutely be able to deploy ASP.NET 5 applications onto Service Fabric clusters, and it will be okay.
Fancy pants.
Yeah. So you can do things like create a stateful service and then deploy a stateless service with an ASP with like a web API style with a ASP.NET 5 endpoint that returns JSON, which goes and grabs data and gives it to you and things like that. All of that stuff will absolutely be possible.
Cool.
If you like Service Fabric and want to do those things on it.
Very educated answer. I've only got about 5 more minutes, so we have to bang through these really quickly. When do we get JavaScript and TypeScript linters? Those existed in 2013, but not in 2015.
Is that because you had Web Essentials and Madge removed them?
I don't know.
So our original intent was to rely on Gulp and stuff and Grunt and things like that to run these sorts of tools. And I know, and in fact, Mads, I believe, removed things like Mads used to have the ability to, as you save a TypeScript window, it would automatically generate JavaScript and things like that. And I believe he removed a bunch of that preemptively ready for Gulp and Grunt. I don't know if he's going to go back on that and he's going to start adding it back into Web Essentials. I'm also not sure on the TypeScript team's tooling efforts and when they are going to be loading up in Visual Studio, because Madge's support in Web Essentials was always, I'm going to release this thing, and then as Visual Studio releases stuff, I'm going to back it out, right, out of Web Essentials and into Visual Studio proper.
And Mads had shared with me too that was in order to do that, he was hosting separate node processes, and it caused a lot of instability. So by moving to a Gulp task or a Grunt task, it's a lot more stable overall.
Yes, the biggest instability in Web Essentials, as I understand it, was things like linting and minifying.
Yeah, well, running stuff in process is always going to be unstable compared to running them out of process. And what's the nice thing about almost all of Visual Studio now is that it's all shelling out to command lines and stuff, right?
Yeah. And the other thing with that is, and I talked about this a little bit because people were like, oh yeah, Gulp and Grunt give me, why do I care about these things giving me tooling? Because I've already got tooling, it's in Visual Studio and it's amazing. And part of it is that you can clone the repo and you've got the tooling, versus Visual Studio being an extra step that you've got to install beforehand to make things work. Not a necessary thing you've got to install beforehand. I mean, an add-on, right? Like if you're relying on Web Essentials to do your minification, everybody has to have Web Essentials. And that's okay for some people, but it's often not, especially when you're building a big open source project where there's 5 different versions of Visual Studio people are using. Some guys using Vi.
All right, we need to hurry.
So I hear.
Would be great to have a tooling edition of this stand-up, since a lot of the functionality in ASP.NET 5 is introduction of new tools. Let's do that. Let's have a guest star.
We could do a guest star, or we could talk about just tooling.
Okay. What's the story on official identity server support?
No idea.
I have no idea about that. We'll have Hunter and ask him that question.
Yeah. I avoid security, anything with the word security in it. I try and avoid because it's much safer that way.
In Visual Studio 2013 encoding TypeScript, I could split the windows to see transpiled JavaScript. That was because of Mads Christensen, and he removed that because they told him to.
Yeah. And now
is it planned to come back?
It might. I don't know. I'm not sure about the TypeScript to the team's effort.
As I recall, he was told to remove that because they were going to do it themselves. So I would think that is a thing you need to put the pressure on them for. Because as I recall, they were going to do that.
Yeah. Mads was very, very good, and he released all this amazing TypeScript tooling, like the day the TypeScript was released. And then eventually the TypeScript guys said, yeah, okay, now we're okay, we're caught up, we're ready to start doing our own thing. Thank you, and good night. So.
Okay. Does Gulp and Grunt concatenate minification tasks make sense with HTTP2 allowing multiplexing to speed up HTTP requests? Sure. It depends, and yes, it does probably make sense because it's one thing to, I mean, they're doing different problems, right? Concatenating maybe less so because it does streamlining, streamlining and stuff. But yes, minifying matters no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah. Does MVC have anything like the API Explorer so we can implement Swagger and Postman exports? Yes, Swashbuckle is what you use for that.
Yeah.
And I believe we're trying to get Swashbuckle for ASP.NET 5 working.
Yeah.
And final one, as I really need to go because I can hear my kids outside. Using Grunt TS and TypeScript transpiling into www root, except Visual Studio IntelliSense isn't using the TypeScript version that I referenced in package.json.
Sorry, say that again.
I'm using Grunt-TS for TypeScript transpiling into www root. Visual Studio IntelliSense does not use TypeScript. This TypeScript version referencing in package.json. So he's basically noticing that he's got appears like two different versions of TypeScript, and there's the one that IntelliSense thinks about, and the one that
so you'll probably find is that there's a version of the TypeScript compiler installed in program files by Visual Studio, and there's a version of the TypeScript compiler installed by npm, and they probably don't match. And sometimes you're hitting the program files one, and sometimes you're hitting the one installed by npm. That's probably what you're seeing. It happened to me once. I would look for that. Do like where TS, find where the compiler is that you're referencing. It's very easy to get into a situation where you've got them both. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, we actually have the same problem with the DNX on and off, and we've been trying to deal with it. And I remember this exact issue because when I noticed it, I realized they have the same problem that we have.
All right, cool.
Cool.
So Damien was missed, and do you have anything else, Glenn?
I emailed Mads, and we added schema support for. He was playing around with some schema support for resource integrity for CDNs, for any of those of you who have been following along on bleeding edge browser stuff. This is the ability to put a hash into your script tag, and the browsers will verify whether or not the file they get is the same as the hash, so you can protect against CDNs being poisoned. I sent an email about it on Saturday, and by Sunday, Mads sent me an email saying, "Hey, I added some schema support for this. It looks cool. We should do something." But that was fun.
All right.
Yeah, but just otherwise, we're testing stuff. If you find bugs, if you want to test along at home our beta 8 bits and tell us that you found bugs in the beta 8 package, go nuts.
Magical. Did you know that my children think I look like the Sandman in this shirt?
Really? The Sandman?
Go Google Sandman.
Okay.
The guy from who hung out with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Not the Sandman. Not the Sandman from Vertigo Software. Not Vertigo Software, but the one from Spider-Man.
Yeah, that is actually what gets returned when.
The other guy, the convict. So.
Yeah. I guess you do look like he does wear the green. He does wear a green and striped shirt.
Cool.
And on that bombshell.
Yep, I just wanted to let you know that little bit of information because I was feeling very conspicuous.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we're good. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. We had 95 viewers.
95. Wow. That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah. We'll see you again next week.
Yeah, U95 is my favorite. Don't tell anybody else.
Can you do the zoom out? Okay, hang on. Not yet. I'm ready. Zoom back in. I'm not ready.
Dramatic zoom in.
Dramatic zoom in. Okay. Here we go. Wrong direction. Okay, ready? Go. Bum, 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 bum. That was bad.